are sitting on a gold mine worth of data. You've got driver behavior over here, you've got fuel consumption over there, you've got maintenance reports, internal reports sitting on a completely different system. Unfortunately, this is all disconnected. The power comes in when you have the ability to seamlessly integrate all of this data into one clear picture. So imagine a fleet manager has the ability not just to integrate all his fleet data, but also internal reports that have been created through Power BI, Tableau, aggregate that data and generate reports that are then spit out on a monthly, daily, hourly basis. So I believe that is quite a big factor. Regarding Africa, it's extremely vital. We have to take into consideration such things as road conditions, driver experience, even connectivity is different from country to country. Regardless of the territory, I do believe safety must be the primary function from all territories. An unsafe driver won't just cost you productivity, but it could also cost lives on point. So that's exactly it. So if I may, the bold step would be connect the data, make it available, and give the fleets the power to prevent incidences from happening rather than reacting to them.
Very good. Very compelling call to action. But with the sheer amount of data that's currently being provided to fleet owners today, I guess we need to really take a change or make an adjustment to how we present this information. Because how do we make use of that to make sure that we drive the risk down, obviously manage the safety in our fleet effectively, and still use that data as effectively as possible? Yeah. Your views on that?
So as I mentioned earlier, and we talk about it all the time, data is gold. But if you can't refine it into something that is valuable, it's worthless. So fleets today are drowning in dashboards and reports and so forth, and they don't know where to start or what to action first. So we got to change the way we present data. Static dashboards must be the thing of the past. We need insights that have call to actions, and we've seen it today. Which roads have got the highest risk of collisions? Which vehicle needs proactive maintenance? Which driver needs training? So all of that call to action is something that we definitely have to focus on. But beyond these insights, we also have to present data to fleet managers, executives, and even drivers that can understand. And the way we do this is through simplifying the reports, clear visualization on the reports, and basing the reports on true and accurate data. Now, that can be a whole other discussion that we can have. True and accurate data is key. In the industry, you know, if we look at video telematics, there's so many competitors out there that can say, oh, I can do the same as Optix at a cheaper price and so forth. And I just beg you to please confirm that it's apples with apples, because that true accurate data is very, very key. Yeah. So in conclusion, we need to change data into a story. Story is telling you what is happening, why it's happening, and what to do next to react to it.
Takes me back to and I was actually speaking to Cornel about it earlier, but a gentleman by the name of Wim Bernhard from Transport, he used to head up our petroleum division, and I've got the utmost amount of respect for this man, and I always will. And I always made a joke, and I said, I'm sure he can tell you the difference between a Pirelli tire and a Hockenheim tire, and that's just how long he's been in the transport for. But Uncle Bernhard, when we just started introducing the Optix dashboards, and Gerard was always with me when we did that, we had these sessions on Friday morning. We would go to each of the executives with all the electronic BI dashboards ready to present the insights to their statistics. And Uncle Bernhard always had still does, wear shirts with a pocket, and he had a color pen in each of the colors that you can possibly imagine. And the red one was always his favorite. So we would sit down and we would look at driver safety per depot, and then he would take his red pen, take the lid off, and then point on my laptop screen and said he wants to understand this more. And then I'd double click it and it'll go a level down. And then he said, no, but print that page for me. So then we would go out and print an A3 page of the dashboard he's looking at. Spend a lot of time writing notes on it and asking questions, very detailed questions, very involved in his business. And then he'd take his red pen again and tap on my laptop screen and says, but what about this? And I'll double click it and there would be a second page. So by the time that Gerard and I walked out of his office on a Monday morning, we had 13 A3 pages of dashboards printed. And inevitably, after the 7 years, we got Uncle Bernhard to actually open up the dashboards and use it. But I think the key fundamentals of that is, we always joked and we said it's about building this nerd bridge. So we have this highly intellectual, super smart industrial engineers that come into companies and they understand numerics to the nth decimal. But can that individual speak to a transport depot manager and make it relevant in the information that needs to be shared? And I think that sharing of information is critical. Just opening it up to the floor. We've heard about all these multiple perspectives. There's a lot of speak about innovation, partnerships, bold actions that needs to be taken. Damien, I want to have a look at what are the biggest obstacles fleets face in turning technology into real world change?
So probably a couple. The first one is buy-in. And what I mean by buy-in is not just from drivers, I'll get to that in a minute, but from managers as well. You may have heard when you bring another system in that they have to work in on a day-to-day basis. I'm already running 100 miles an hour. I've now got to look at this safety system and try and analyze videos and risk scores, etc. So making it simple so that if there's 3 minutes of every day, that person is able to see exactly what they need to work on and address the highest level of risk very, very quickly. So making it easy for them to work with a new system. Buy-in from drivers, obviously, that's always brought up as a difficult one when you're talking about video. I've dealt with Teamsters unions in the US, with workers' councils in Germany and unions around the world. And, it's an interesting fact that it's not they complain about having video or cameras in the vehicle. It's more about what that company is going to do with the data. And that's what they worry about. So enabling the driver to start using some of the data and actually taking ownership for maybe some of the coaching is a really good way to overcome some of those obstacles that are put in place when you first start talking about implementing a new technology in a new area. And the second point is there's no doubt at the moment there's challenges for every business. There always has been, but at the moment cost pressures and perhaps resource pressures. So trying to help companies sweat their assets longer, to maybe find better ways of using the data more effectively to get better results without having to reinvest in new technology straight away is something that we are looking to try and do more of, so that we can help you with the existing technology, work it better, and then identify when it's the right time to bring in new technology. So it may sound a bit strange coming from maybe Optix and from myself as well, saying, no, we don't want you to buy new stuff from us, but we do want the technology you have today to really work for you, and then we've got to focus on that as well, especially in these sort of times at the moment.
Very good. Alan, do you believe that data will become the most valuable currency in transport safety? And if so, how should we protect and share it responsibly?
Well, I think that data is already the biggest currency in transport, and I think the question is how do you unfragmentize it, if that makes sense. I mean, Clay spoke about it a bit earlier, where he said back in the day you did driver behavior on harsh braking, but it's uncontextualized. So how do you get that various sources of data into a place where you can truly add contextualized insight? And then with that value comes a responsibility of making sure through this ecosystem or through your partners that it's almost treated with it must be treated with the same type of security like our money is protected in the banks. So I think it's important for you to have a structure in your business that's focused on policy, that's focused on accountability, and focused on measuring the security of the data as data now starts flowing through all these platforms to be able to offer that insight.
Very good, thank you. Beat, what role should regulation and government policy play in accelerating and supporting technology adoption?
I think there should be a close collaboration between government and business and the suppliers like yourselves in developing legislation that talks to the realities of the day. I mean, you can implement anything like we've seen in the COVID of times where lots of the legislation was rolled out, but it wasn't practical. Yeah, so I think once you get to a point where the legislation is implementable and delivers a result for all entities involved, not just government, we would have a great adoption of this technology across the spectrum, and obviously have safer drivers on the road.
Very good.
Yeah.
Tony, this is one that comes up quite often in conversation. Do you foresee that OEMs adopting more integrated safety technologies directly into vehicles would have an impact on our businesses? And what do you see the future of hardware to look like?
Really good question. So I think the OEM space for me is really interesting. It's quite fragmented, I would say, with its use of, especially hardware technology. I think having dealt with quite a few OEMs that are looking to integrate video safety, there's no kind of one common denominator there. They're all looking to do different things. I think where the OEM space has definitely developed is solutions like ADAS. More consumer, if I'm being honest with you, the consumer understanding different sort of driver metrics and driver safety things that they're putting into the dash of the vehicles. But again, this is a very common theme. I would say also that definitely looking at the way there's experts that deliver safety is very, very different to how an OEM will deliver their solutions. They've been very, very focused on things like connectivity across their platforms. So as an example of this, in Europe, someone like the Volkswagen Group, they've built their connectivity platform first to roll that out across their multiple brands. So their infotainment systems and their data is uniformed across the platform. That's a really good approach if you can bring that into safety. We sat here maybe 10 years ago and we were talking about vehicles being autonomous, and driving themselves. And the technology is just not advanced to make it safe enough yet. The other point is, around the room now, we are all looking at safety in a very, very different way to an OEM will ever go down. They will never drop down to that layer of some of the data that you've seen today, some of the challenges that our customers and partners face within their businesses. OEMs are not looking at it from that level. It's more of a consumer-driven rather than a commercial decision. So I think it's our job, as partners and to integrate with them and provide more value to the customers. But we definitely have to interpret the data and make it more safety conscious rather than the sort of consumer element.
Fully aligned with you. I think what I can add to that is that the provision of the hardware and the hardware capability and the continuous evolution of the hardware is critical, because it's really the source of the recording that enables us to have the information. But I think positioning yourself as a safety partner with your customers is critical, making sure that you go onto that safety journey with them and also own the safety alongside the management in that business. As a final challenge, lightning round. Before we close, I'd like to give each of the audience one specific actionable insight that can be implemented immediately, something that they can take home today. Ryan, one action for better data utilization.
We heard a lot today about safety in the future, but I do believe it's the choices we make today that will shape that future. I don't believe there's one piece of hardware or software that will give you the total safety. It is everyone that's on the panel today, and with Optix leading the way with regards to integrating that and making it an ecosystem of total data is what we need to look at doing.
Very good. Tony, one partnership approach fleets should consider?
Never stop innovating, I think is my point. Have a look internally at your businesses, work out how you can change the way you do your day-to-day business. I think that's critical. You should absolutely be engaging your local technology providers. I think that's absolutely key. From a local technology provider like Optix that then has access to global businesses that are looking at trends across global is key, because that's how we really drive innovation. And ultimately, we're all here to make the world a safer place on the roads, right? We've all got the same goal. So never stop innovating is my thing.
Love that. Piet, one operational change that pays dividends.
I think don't dump tech in your business. When you deploy tech, create collaborative environments where the teams work together, and you'll get to a point where you move from a compliance culture to a commitment culture. And once you're there, you've won the war. So.
Very good. Alan, one data strategy tip?
I think we've heard from all the learned friends that everybody has got massive amounts of data, whether it be data on your fuel spend or data on your drivers or profiles. But with me spending some time with guys that do these machine learning models, one of the biggest frustrations or one of the biggest tasks is making sure that this data is then cleaned and stacked in order for it to be ready for stuff like ML and AI to really make sense of all that data. So I think it's understanding what that structure looks like, and I'm not saying I do, what does that structure look like? How do you need to make sure your data is packaged so that you are also future-proofed by having your data ready to be learned through those algorithms.
And each business fit obviously different from the others, making sure that it's specifically robust to your business. Damien, closing question. One way to ensure that technology adoption succeeds?
Well, I think I'll go back to what I said earlier on. I think continuous improvement. As this is a user group, most of you will be using Optix technology and their partners' technology. And so I think you've got to continue look back at why you invested in the first place. Work with Optix, as Jacques said, your safety partner, to do some benchmarking. You may feel you've got the best solution in the world, but then you compare it to others, you may learn something and continually improve. So speak to your contacts to try and find some benchmarking data and just start looking at how you can keep bringing the risk down in your business.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've heard today is not just about the future. It's about the choices we make right now. It's about the partnerships that we build, the data strategies that we implement, and the human-centered approach we take to technology adoption. I think consensively today, the near future of transport safety won't be shaped in a single technology or company, but it will rather be shaped by collaboration, practical implementation, and our collective commitment to making roads safer for everyone. So I'd like to thank our panelists. Really great conversation today. I really feel confident that the future of transport safety is in this room, and it starts with what we do next. Give them a hand.
Jacques and his panelists. If I can ask the panelists to stay on stage, we're going to bring some more chairs up, and I'm also going to ask Waldo, Clay, and Inga Marie to join us up on stage as we go into the Q&A session. And if you've got some burning questions, especially after that panel discussion and obviously the whole morning, I would ask you to jump into the arena and raise your hands, and we'll get a microphone to you. Okay, we've got one over here. We'll get a microphone to the gentleman, and we can start asking some of the questions in the room. We've also got some questions coming through on WhatsApp and online, so we'll tackle those as we go along. Where's Waldo? And there he is. Okay. No, that wasn't meant to be like that, but yeah. But there he is. Yes. Yes.
We also run very effective just-in-time technologies in our business.
This room is very sharp for a Monday. And Inga Marie? Oh yeah, she had to step out. Okay, all right, cool. So we'll have two of you, and we've got Jacques and the rest of the panel. Great. I think that's more than we can give you. This is a lot of people with a lot of knowledge in one room. Right, so you had a question. Now, if you just get your name and where you're from. Okay, there comes the microphone. Fantastic.
Okay, my question to the panel, and to anybody in the room, if the use of handheld devices in any vehicle, commercial or private, is the biggest source of road accidents, if that statement is reasonable.
It is.
What is technology and owners of transport companies in particular, because they form the basis of this audience, what are they doing about changing that horrible statistic?
No, who wants to grab that one?
I think there's various technologies at the moment that are trying to curb the receipt of signal of handheld devices in cab itself. I know and I can speak from a route optimization technology perspective, what we're seeing more recently, and it's a prevalent functionality and value add of our product called Vantage, is although the route planning takes place under the intelligence of the vehicle, while the vehicle is under operation, the functionality of the hardware doesn't come to the front. So it's empowering that driver to have the ability to make the right decision at the right time, but also doing it in such a way that it remains responsible. I think in a perfect world, a signal blocker that allows zero signal receipt in cab, I think is the way to go. But I think the functionality and the practicality of that is obviously questionable based on is it a first world, second or third world country, and availability of obviously funding and innovation that exists. But I think it's trying to find that happy medium between entrusting that your driver is a professional and that you are also a responsible citizen, taking the ownership and accountability in your own hand, but still have the functionality and the requirement as and when you do. I know as a simple example, I've got the most ugliest phone carrier that I connect to my rearview mirror, and because I can guarantee you, and there's not a lot of men that would admit to this, but I am ridiculous when it comes to direction, so I can't go anywhere without my phone. But it's a matter of just taking accountability of what I can do in the car and not.
I'm just wondering whether, and just following on from my point about learning from colleagues in the room, if there's anybody that's got a process they put in place or a learning that they could share rather than listening to us.
There's a gentleman at the back.
Sorry. Okay, good day. Yeah, so basically as a company, we implemented the policy seeing that that was also our biggest concern. The company policy pretty much just say no handheld device if you're busy driving. So you enforce it, gets discipline.
I mean, maybe to add that, is it realistic removing that handheld device? I mean, it's obviously part of their communication process with the business. So it's part of a work tool, but also unfortunately being used for other things as well.
I get what the gentleman is saying. In my past employment, that was a really big focus point for us to eradicate cell phone usage while driving. And the technology is amazing, an ancillary product in order to try and detect. But the detection of the problem is one issue. It's the actual coaching and the methodology that's taken in the business in order to really drive that down. One thing that was brought up earlier that I think is very relevant, and I see Wayne glaring over his glasses for me, and it's actually a lesson that he's taught me, is every single driver with every single technology that you're going to implement in the truck is first and foremost going to believe that it's there for punitive reasons. You're there to catch him out, you're there to discipline him, you're there in order to make his life difficult. The moment that the mindset change takes place, that all technologies are there for their benefit from a safety perspective, that's really when the adoption starts coming on board. And cell phone usage specifically, it's a very difficult habit to break. But once it's shared in such a way that the drivers understand it's to their benefit and the health and safety, diminishing the health and safety risk of fellow road users, I think that's really the secret. Can you keep it out of the cab? I don't think so.
If I would like to add, I think how you react in that moment is most probably one of the most vital ways of how you're going to curb that behavior. Who today knew that if you're on your phone answering that WhatsApp for 1 second, you've traveled 33 meters? Yeah. So it's also education to that driver, and not only on the edge, because I mean Optix does that really well with notifying the driver in real time that is outputting behavior now that's really not so good. But then I've seen some of Optix's coaching models where that becomes a coaching file in their software platform and on their Empower Me. Is it Empower Me? Empower Me platform where the driver can now actually physically understand why it is a bad behavior. In some of our customers with Optix cameras, we've seen a massive reduction in cell phone usage because the guy actually understands. And I'm equally as bad up until today, because I did not know that if you do 1 second, you've traveled 33 meters. So it's education, and it's letting the guy know on the edge while it's happening that you are now not so good.
I can come in there as well, guys. Definitely from a global perspective, what we're seeing with our customers, it's around the policies that they put in place. There is a huge driver shortage. Yeah, I'm sure it's global. It's not just a European or an APAC or an Africa's problem. So, your drivers are so valuable for you that you should, invest time in education, but also remuneration as well. So it's not about the stick, they're doing things wrong. It's about how you actually bring them along this journey, this safety journey with you. And as I said earlier, when I was talking about the when we did the survey across our drivers, number one was pay, So if you can explain to them the benefits and the ROI associated with safety and make it beneficial for them to drive the risk down in the business and come on that journey with you, those are the customers that we see have the less risk, and a better way of working with their drivers.
Very good.
So not going away, but maybe reframing the problem and maybe coming up with some other solutions as well. Definitely the way to go. I just want to check if there's any other questions in the room, because I've got one from the WhatsApp. Let's go maybe to that. It's Justin who asks, what does the future look like in terms of automatically identifying drivers to assign them to their events? Reduce the manual labor of assigning. This is a hurdle in the space where multiple drivers are driving multiple vehicles, especially for Empower Me. And there's a follow-up question to that. So you know what that means? Okay, Clay, go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks to Justin for the question. I think that, look, it's a key issue for us and for our customers, because how do you address the risk if you don't know who's responsible for the risk, right? So driver identification is obviously a key focus area for us. There are a few ways that we can circumnavigate that. The first one is, looking at what technology exists within your operation that we can leverage off of from an integration perspective. So if you have driver tags, how do we use that tagging information to feed back into the events that are generated from a coaching perspective? But I think naturally, as technology has advanced, driver facial recognition is an obvious one that many people ask. I think there is technology available today. I think it's taken some time for it to get to a point of high accuracy. I think for us as the common person, your cell phone has facial recognition, all right? But that phone is probably like 30 centimeters away from your face. If you look at the position of a dash cam, it's a bit further away. So the technology has not always been available for us to do accurate facial recognition. The second issue there is that people also change over time. I might grow a beard, I might lose weight, I might gain weight. All of those things impact the accuracy of the overall algorithm. Having said that, though, the future is not gloom. We do have facial ID that is available on some of our solutions now. From a privacy perspective, is something to consider for sure as we start capturing drivers' biometric information. So I would implore you to just consider that and look at POPI and your company policy and how you navigate those things. But there is technology available, but there's also leverage positions for us to look at other technology available within your operation that we can use to help identify who the driver is.
There was a follow-up question to that, but it might be a bit early to tell, because it says, if it is on the cards, will this come as a free update on the current cameras?
But pass.
All right, okay. Pay to play. So that might be an unanswered one for now. I just want to see if there's any additional questions in the room. Anyone else with a burning question, please don't feel free to ask. Otherwise, Nick, you've got another question for us from online?
Yeah, I've got another question that came in via the WhatsApp. The question is, in terms of the Optix Academy, will it be able to provide this service in the language of our drivers' understanding?
So that comes back to the vernacular, and also obviously in Europe as well, with all the different languages.
Yeah, thanks. So in the absence of Inga Marie, I'm happy to take that. So from a content perspective, we try to make that available in kind of our base languages that we support. We also allow kind of our partner customers to create content within whichever language or whichever medium they're best suited to. So and that's the journey that we take our customers on. Whether that's a very specialized or personalized message you want to push to a group or a campaign within the company. So that's definitely capability that we have, but also platform-wise, we call it internationalization in the tech world. That's always top of mind, essentially updating everything from menu items through to kind of the way that you engage with the platform. That's still on the roadmap, but our content, ultimately the training material itself, is definitely something that can be done.
Also, I think bearing in mind that in South Africa there's a regulatory requirement for you to speak English, because you have to fill out all the paperwork, and the backup admin is in English, right? So you have to have a high proficiency of English to start with.
Yeah, so I think safety kind of crosses language barriers. But I think from a regulatory perspective, that's not my area of expertise. So I'll pass on that. But from a kind of a medium perspective, it's about kind of transmitting that knowledge, and that we can do in the language of preference.
Right. So it's not what you communicate, but it's what the other person understands that's most important in being effective. Nick, have you got another one?
Yeah, we've got one more that's come through on the WhatsApp. The question is, the fatigue stats are impressive. Given that the data shows it's repetitive in this regard. Is it possible to flag the fatigue risk before a driver gets behind the wheel?
So like a pre-fatigue assessment, I think is the answer. Yes. So we do have partners in that space, and I think it's something that we're looking to add to our predictive forecasting model, which we launched earlier today. Is that how do we do a pre-fatigue assessment, and on the job or during work conditions a fatigue assessment, and then do an outcome-based coaching requirement thereafter. So there is a lot of technology available. There are some partners within the Optix ecosystem that can support pre-fatigue assessments.
It looks like there's one more here. Hold on.
Okay, we've also got one in the audience here, Nick.
Okay, let me come there first.
Okay, all right.
Just quickly, Andre. I don't know it's difficult, but hijackings. Port Elizabeth, Eastern Cape area, and at Beardep and Seatrick, you guys will know. Sorts. Company cars, which is also high risk if you have a polo. Any new developments on that? The person with the mask gets in, or firearm is noticed, or any driving behavior, any progress being made in that sense?
Okay, just for the purpose of the room, I don't know if everyone heard that, but this is relating to hijacking and safety in the Gqeberha area and surrounding. You want to go the other one?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to your question. So maybe let's start with the video element. So I think Tony alluded to it earlier, is weapon detection. That is something that is functioning in the Latin American market. And I mean, as that algorithm matures, that's something that will come into our market for sure. I know that there are alpha tests. It's a pre-beta, pre-release. So this is something that I can't commit a time on, unfortunately. But also similarly, there are things like driver change identification and passenger limits. So what is available on some of the technology today is the ability to say, I've had a driver change during a trip, and notify you that this is an occurrence. Or if you limit the amount of people in your vehicle, let's say you have a driver and an assistant, if there's 3 people, let's flag that in real time using AI, using machine vision on the edge. And then from a hijacking perspective, I think Ryan, Alan, you guys can also answer.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think I think also 2 answers from my side is one is utilizing stuff like the video telematics as well. What we're practically seeing is that when a criminal steals a vehicle, he doesn't put on his safety belt. So it's prioritizing maybe something like a focus on safety belt notifications. But then there's also technology in this space, especially the Eastern Cape and Tata type of regions. A lot of those vehicle thefts take place with signal jamming type of equipment, and you need to look at technologies that's, again, like I said previously, able to make decisions without human intervention. Switching on vehicle hooter and hazards, and if GSM jamming doesn't go away, to cut that vehicle to get the criminal element to run away. So there's technologies available there. I think he alluded to the fact also earlier that I think maybe one of the biggest frustrations in our space is it's become about price, and it's not become about investing in proper technology, but I want to do it at the lowest rate possible, and then sometimes you miss some of that tech advancement.
So building on to that with regards to be proactive, so i.e. jamming happens, and that's a reality. And we all know, I'm sure we all got war stories here of how quickly, within 5 minutes, something could happen with regards to that. So it's exactly that, to identify, is it a loss, is it jamming, and what is the reaction to do so from that. So then we can look at different solutions, again, different technologies in that. Is there a personal tracker that must be on the driver, that if he gets thrown out the vehicle, that he can push the button, whatever that case may be. But it's taking all of this data into consideration, and then obviously filtering it through to say, what will be the reaction when this gets triggered? And ultimately, humans always need to then trigger that, right?
All right. Nick, have we got one more question?
Yeah, we've got another question that's come through. Sorry, I'm moving around a little bit. So this question is for Piet. How have you structured your team to ensure they cannot only deploy one piece of tech, but continually leverage technology to make an impact? And a follow-up there is, could you elaborate on any key roles or a framework that has worked for DP World in that regard?
Sure, that's loaded. I think not one operation is the same. So you first have to understand the operational risks, and then, like we said, there's lots of tech available, but fit for purpose, what works and what won't work. Once you understand that, then you can deploy something that contributes valuable insights to the operational teams, and they can actually use that to their benefit. To use a specific example, we had an operation that started 3 years ago. We had tech in the operation, didn't deliver the right results. We ended up with horrendous risk. Started changing the tech around and got to a point where, through operational collaboration and the system and the suppliers, we managed to reduce our risks significantly. So yeah, you have to understand what your end result, end state is, and then work with what's available to get to that point. So don't think there's a blanket approach across all your businesses.
And then a follow-up to that was for the panelists, for all of the panelists, how have you seen successful clients do this outside of things that DP World has done? Have you seen other clients deploy something like this successfully as well?
Sure. I'm happy to go first. It's always about the interaction across the workforce. So, we've seen whenever, customers are going into a trial environment, how are they actually managing that trial? It's absolutely critical that they engage their driver workforce when you're going through these trials, to not only just to explain, what the technology does, but more importantly, what the technology doesn't do. That's the most critical thing, because drivers will have, we spoke about it, with your mobile phones. It's more like a connectivity hub now. It does so much on there, right? So giving them the understanding of what you're monitoring, and how you're going to use that data is absolutely key. So getting that driver buy-in really, really helps with the technology adoption from a safety perspective, from a physical camera going in the front of the cab.
If I could again add on to that, we touched on from a proof of concept point of view, understanding what the technology can do. It's very important to have clear deliverables from the onset. Meet those deliverables, because what we find, what I find quite often is you meet the deliverables, but now the goalposts move, and but now can it make coffee? No, it can't make coffee. Let's take the system out. Let's make sure those deliverables are met, tick them, and then obviously move on to the next requirements that is there.
I think from an Optix perspective, we've seen one extreme to the next. So going back to the cell phone question that you asked, Gavin, is, some companies have a zero tolerance rule. So you'll never have a cell phone event generated in those vehicles, because it's not even a case of first warning, second warning. It's you use a cell phone, you're fired. So I think it goes back to an age-old saying that says, tell me how you measure me and I'll show you how I behave. And I think the underlying message there is just about transparency. So let's be transparent with the drivers, include them in this process, tell them what they're being measured on, positively and maybe punitively. So if we're all on the same baseline and we all understand what goal we're trying to achieve together, that's the only way we can be successful.
And also measuring them not because you're trying to keep HR busy, but because it's actually for their own well-being and that realization, right? So, all right. We've got a question in the front.
Hi, my name is Hilton. I'm from Cape Town. I run a small business of 6 units. I just want to know, by Optix, how do you support small businesses with a special package, or is there something like that Optix are looking at the moment?
Yeah, Hilton, thanks for your question. I think that, regardless of the size of your fleet, I think it's our duty as the technology supplier to support and enable you through this journey. So you may not be as big as DP World, and you may not have all these multifunctional support systems to leverage off of, like policies and a check department. But that's where I think Optix can add significant value to your life, is bringing those industry best practices, trying them out with you, and seeing what the positive results may be. So whether it's 1 vehicle or 1,000 vehicles, we're in this. It's a journey that we walk with our customers. And it's about how we can enable and inspire your fleet to become a lot safer.
I think I can add to that, and I think it's important also just from past experience. Regardless of a large organization, there are smaller contracts. And as you implement various contracts, you've got various challenges, like Piet's mentioned. The exciting thing about a smaller business is that you have ability to, at ground level, have the right influence right from the beginning. And instead of, I guess sometimes from a transporter's perspective, it can almost be intimidating. The size of the technology, the capabilities, the functionalities, the dashboards, the implementations, the exhibits. But for you to just take a step back and say, what am I trying to solve in my business? and then utilizing that technology for that capability as a first bite on how you eat the elephant. Just picking up to what Clay said and what I've seen us do phenomenally well is that partnership journey, that safety journey is really that. So you have 15 problems in your business. What is the most urgent one? What is the capability of solving it? And then small but incremental steps in the right direction helping you to get there.
Great. Fantastic.
You actually find that you might get quicker results because you have less red tape. One person makes many decisions. So actually...
Drive alert.
So I had to implement that, but I had to take 2 units this month, 2 units next month, and 2 units, break it up in 3 months, just for my financial cash flow.
But it's nice to be able to do that because, I mean, and again, like I'm a huge fan of entrepreneurial businesses really trying to make it as they grow. It's to use that exact example, even an extended rollout plan of two units per month, the way in which you address the drivers right from the beginning, even prior to the first 2 units, making it into your business, having clarity on what you're actually trying to get done with the implementation, and just those step-per-step methodology with regards to once you've got all the 6 units in, 8, 12, 15, 50 units, whatever that might be, being very clear as to what you want to get from the technology and working closely with your driver pool in order to effectively get them to buy into your solution.
Great.
And we're happy to find a commercial model that works, right? We're not like General Electric that says buy this for R1 or don't buy it at all. I mean, we know that our customers are under significant pressure operationally, the rising fuel price. I mean, you guys are under operational pressures, but we're here to find a commercial solution that's fit for your purpose. So whether that's, no upfront cost, how do we amortize that over a contract period? How do we do a rental? That's our CFO's favorite thing. But there may be things that you need from us to help start that partnership off on the best commercial footing, and we're absolutely open to doing that. If Gerard didn't offer it to you, then we'll have a word with him.
That's Black Friday, is it? Okay.
So that's what you were actually asking.
Coming up. All right, great. I just want to check, is there any other questions in the audience? No. All right,
Nothing
Nick?
else, nothing else from the
Okay,
WhatsApp
great.
either, thanks.
I think that wraps up our Q&A session. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
The time, yeah, wonderful. Jacques and his panel. All right, some great insights, some interesting launches, and some very great discussions. I think we almost draw to a close on today's conference, but let's have one last say from our man in charge, Steve Ford, with some closing remarks and to wish us all well on our journey home safely. Steve, over to you. Let's give him a warm round of applause as he makes his way back.
My conclusion is that being a driver is actually quite cuck. It's a very tough job. I think we shouldn't underestimate how difficult it is, right? A couple of other things is that we now have we have cameras in 60 countries, over 60 countries, and that's our privilege. But that also is quite tricky, right? So in America, they don't use Teams. I don't use WhatsApp. They use SMS, don't use WhatsApp at all. In America, they like to use Zoom. We like to use Teams. In Australia, they think TikTok is the best marketing platform. We think it's for strange videos that our kids take. It's quite amazing. This is done on Prezi. It's not done on PowerPoint. Power BI is super powerful in a lot of the countries we operate in, but some people use Tableau. It's like so as much as the world of the driver is complicated, I think that we're making the world of management also quite super complicated. So I'd urge you to take some careful looking inside your business to make sure that from top to bottom it's also clear. Because we've managed to, mostly driven by me, not understand the platforms we're communicating on. So for example, I like email. Like email, I've sort of got my head around it. Like comes in a thing, you click on it, open it, there's the document. We don't use email anymore. We attach documents into Teams. Why we do that? I don't know. But that's what we do. And then some people, our developers, they don't use WhatsApp and they don't use SMS. They use Slack because that's cool. And I think what we're doing in amongst all these myriad of complexities that we force onto the roads and force onto our drivers and force into our world, we also make it more complicated for ourselves. So clear communication through our businesses is also fundamentally important, because a lot of what we're talking about up here is about communication. Another anecdote that resonated with me from one of the comments made, one of our customers, our global customers, is UPS. UPS have over 120,000 vehicles in the US with drive cams in, and a growing fleet of 20-odd thousand vehicles outside of the US that Optix is rolling out around the world outside the US. Optix has done all the data analytics for the whole of the UPS installation group in the US and outside of the US. And if I show you the business analytics or the data analytics that UPS use, you'd go, you couldn't possibly make it less intuitive, less illustrative, less exciting to go and look at. It's just the most boring use of any data analytics I've ever seen. But if in southern Albuquerque, there's a question mark on one of the figures on one of the pages of those reports, we'll get a call. Because the people at UPS hold safety right at the top of their list of important things, and each person is held accountable. And that means that management downwards are held accountable for the delivery of safety in their business. And they've got more of a complex schedule, and guess what? Their bonuses get paid, and the bonuses of the depot get paid based on the delivery of a safe solution. So it's a kind of a mixture of what we're talking about is making sure the drivers are engaged, but also at the end of the day, you have to hold your people accountable, right? So I think that's super, super important. I had a couple of other anecdotes that I was thinking about, but due to my age, I can't remember. Yeah. The other thing that resonated with me while I was listening to Inga Marie is that, and someone mentioned driver churn. Driver churn is a major problem globally. It's a combination of it being a cuck job and also being something where there's a lot of, where people are not wanting to come into the industry, and then a lot of people see it as quite transitory. So you become a driver, and then you want to become a supervisor, a manager, whatever, which is quite natural. So one of the mistakes we made is that we put a drive cam in the cab or a piece of technology in the cab, and we've got a lot of trainers and we've got a lot of digital platforms that we use, but then you can have 20% driver churn in a year. So the 20% of new people that join the company that may have driven before and didn't have a drive cam in their vehicle, now they've got a device on the windscreen talking to them. And if we haven't made these people aware of what that's about, when it talks, why it talks, how it talks, and what the consequence of that is, then what are we expecting? How can we expect alignment? So what a lot of the principles of the training academy was and remain to make sure that we constantly make people aware of what the technology is intended for. It kind of makes sense, hopefully. Another thing that resonated. So Smart Eye is a super interesting piece of a super interesting company, a super interesting piece of technology, and they're just rolling out right now the beta testing of drunk driver testing, right? So the device will know whether you're under the influence or not, and that's one of the scourges of our industry and something that's very difficult to detect. And the consequence of detecting it is Voldo's story is you miss the ruler completely, and the consequences are severe. So watch the space for future development of predicting whether the person's under the influence, and that'll go alcohol, and then it'll go to other drugs. And what are you looking at? You're looking at the person's eyes. You're looking at their movement, their head movements, etc. I really think that's slick, and it'll be a really powerful new development off the same device. But just to correct the guy over there, that value add doesn't come for free. I'm joking. So I think what we'd intended to show you, and I started by saying this morning, is we wanted to illustrate to you how we're trying to turn data into information. We're trying to put this information in the hands of the people that need it as fast as possible, and we're trying to reduce the noise so that every time we interact with somebody in the cab, it's super relevant and on point and accurate. And every time we give a message to management as to how to improve their fleet, it's on point, relevant and accurate. And hopefully that gives you today's given you some insight of that. And then talking about the future, about that word predictive that I spoke about, there's a lot of stuff here today that's about being predictive and making sure that you're constantly trying to catch stuff happening before it happens. So thanks a heck of a lot for attending today. We'll do this next year. We'll talk to you about the state of the data. Thanks for that, Clay. It was very insightful. And we'll talk to you about new stuff that we'll be launching. You have my absolute assurance that now that we have all this data, we've got this thing. You guys won't believe this. We've got a data lake. Super cool. Yeah, I know. But essentially what it is, it's a product by Azure, which allows us to put data up into the cloud and spit it back to you at the same speed regardless of where you're at, because that's another problem for us, is we need to be able to communicate back to people at a speed that's relevant, because as soon as it's older than 3 minutes, it's too old to be relevant, right? So we're putting a whole bunch of layers of platform and data and business intelligence in place to develop more and more products to be more and more predictive so that we can stop people having accidents and get them safely home. So thanks very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Steve Ford rounding it up for us, and I hope you've had a fantastic morning. You've walked away with some great insights. I'm sure there's plenty to post on LinkedIn and on whatever other platforms you're using, Slacker and WhatsApp and I don't know, whatever else is happening at the moment. I can't keep track. Snapchat. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of today. And with that, it's time to do some networking, some connecting. Please feel free to visit the booths on the side, leave your testimonial, have those conversations. You've made the time to be here. Make the most of it, because you know how it goes. It's now the last rush to December, and then before you know it, we're in 2026 and wondering what happened to all those weeks. I hope that today sparked some ideas, some conversations, and lunch will just be served just outside the doors. Please also feel free to go to the counter in the foyer to get your complimentary parking ticket, so you don't have to worry about the parking. And thank you to everyone for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure emceeing both this event and the Johannesburg event for 2025. And you have yourself a good week ahead and get home safely.
Thank you.